Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for EVE Echoes. Today we're going to be looking at the Galante Federation Tristan, which is a cheap and versatile Tech 3 combat frigate. We're going to cover the different ways you can fit this for different types of combat, and then we're going to have a look at the skill path you would take to skill into this, and the ships beyond it, and of course we will have a look at what those ships might be as well. If you enjoy the Tristan, then ultimately where you go from there. Now, if you do enjoy this video, let me know by hitting like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, and of course ding that notification bell to make sure you never miss a video, as I am uploading daily. Hopefully there is new, fresh, exciting content for you every day then on this channel. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in a future video, either by commenting down below or finding me on social media, including the Cat Skull Cartel Discord. And speaking of the Cat Skull Cartel Discord, if you do want to come and join us in-game, carving out our empire down in Nullsec, you can come onto that Discord and apply for a position within the Cat Skull Cartel's family of corporations. Now finally as well, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can do so by joining us over on Patreon. Details are on screen now. Otherwise, let's jump right in and talk about the Tristan. The Tristan is the Galante Federation's Tech 3 combat frigate, so let's go there and have a look at what this is all actually about. Now, this is an incredibly versatile frigate, though it is also the first drone boat that you will encounter on any of the ship trees. It's the only Tech 3 drone boat out there, and the only drone frigate that you can get until you hit the Gurustus Pirate's worm. Now, if we look here at its attributes and fittings, and look at its fitting profile, you can see that it has two drone slots. Both of those are small drone launchers, and they can only launch small drones. Then there are two high slots, one mid slot, and two low slots to this. Its defense is 1664 with 398 on shields, 480 on armor, and 489 on structure. Now those are actually fairly close, so if you really want to, you can actually get away with either shield tanking or armor tanking this one. I personally recommend going more down the armor tanking route, but again, it is possible to go down either. If we look down further down here, you'll see maximum lock targets of 3, signature radius then of 36 meters. This is a frigate-sized ship, and it's not quite as small as some of the others, but it is on the smaller end of frigates, so it is fairly hard to hit. It has a decent flight velocity of 399 meters per second, and a fairly low mass with about a middling inertia modifier. This isn't really going to be speed tanking anytime soon, but it can get away with getting up close and personal and going into brawling, which we'll discuss later on. If we look at the Tristan's trait descriptions, you'll see that for small drone operation, each skill level that you have in small drone operation will give you a 5% increase to drone DPS and drone EHP, effective hit points. This means that your drones, if you've got small drone operation at full level 5, are doing 25% extra damage and have 25% extra health, means they survive longer and hit harder. Always a nice thing to have. Frigate Command then, for each level you have of that, gives you a 5% increase to small railgun tracking speed. Now notably that means that small railguns that are fitted to this are able to apply their damage better to targets that are up close and personal or moving at a decent angular velocity, but at the same token it doesn't actually increase the DPS of any particular weapon system, so you can actually choose different types of weapons to go in there, which again is something that we'll cover now that we go into fitting this thing. The first build that I'm going to showcase is my personal favourite, and that is the Tristan drone kiting build. Now ultimately Tech 3 kiting is actually something that is incredibly powerful. If you've watched my video on how to go kiting with the Tier 3 Kestrel, you'll understand what I mean. This is all about outpacing and outranging your opponent's guns in order to avoid any damage that you might get from them. In fact, you can do anomalies as high as Tier 7 with this kind of setup. I've seen people do even higher with the Kestrel. I know you can do it with the Tristan as well, but I'm going to suggest 7 is a good point that most players will be able to achieve with a build like this. Now, as I said, it's all about the range. The idea here is that we outrange our opponent's guns so that we take minimal damage from them at all. Now, to that end, for the high slots here, I've gone for disciplined small missile launchers. As I said, when we look at the stats for the Tristan, ultimately small railgun tracking speed means that railguns are more likely to hit their target than other turrets, but missiles always hit their target and have a better range profile. In this case, the disciplined small missile launchers that I've got fitted here have a missile range of 21.05 kilometers, although of course other missiles will vary as well depending on your missile skills. Mark 5 small missile launchers are just as good, they just don't do quite as much damage, but they do still have a very similar range. And it's all about that range here. Range is what I've gone for, that's why it's not torpedoes, that's why it's not railguns. You could go for strike cannons here, but I find they take up an awful lot of power grid and they're not quite as reliable. Now this then means that in our mid slots in the drone tubes, I've gone for Mark V warriors. Of course, you can put any of your favourite Mark V drones here. Currently, Mark V are the best we can get. Mark 7 arrives in a couple of weeks. We'll then get Mark 9 at some point later, and eventually, I'm sure we will eventually find out how on earth we get the faction level drones, things like the Imperial Navy Acolytes, and that kind of thing. And that's when drone ships are really going to come into their own, when those drones become available. But for now, Mark V are the best I can get. They're still fairly solid, 18.47 DPS per warrior. There's 2 of these, and of course you get the bonuses there applied from the Tristan as well. Now the mid slot here is ultimately an either or. Because we're keeping at range, something like a Nosferatu or a Neutralizer is frankly pointless. I've gone for a Mark V Stasis Webifier here because anything that gets within that sort of 11.2 kilometer optimal range of this thing, I can whack that Webifier on, move to a bit further range, it slows them down so that I can then outrange them and keep doing that damage. The alternative thing to go for here would be a Warp Disruptor. Warp Disruptors have a range of about 20 kilometers as well, so you can be using your missiles and your drones from 20 kilometers away whilst disrupting the target ship. And that is an incredibly powerful thing in PvP, especially against other frigates or destroyers that may have not gone for warp stability rigs or any form of warp stability in the low slots. You can actually do incredibly well in PvP with a Tristan fitted with a Warp Disruptor going for a kiting build. Great fun. I do recommend it sometime. Now for the low slots, the first thing I've gone for here is a Dealer Small Micro Warp Drive. Micro Warp Drive is our propulsion system of choice, simply because we don't want it active most of the time. We're going to use this to get as far away as possible. We're then going to sit at that range and attack our opponents from 21 kilometers away with the drones and the missiles. Then when they get closer, we can activate the Micro Warp Drive and zip away to a safe distance again. This means the second low slot, because we're not expecting to take any form of damage here really, I don't need to worry about going for any form of tank. I could go for a small shield booster or small armor repairers. Heck, I could even put in something like armor plating in that here. But frankly, I'd rather just straight up go for drone damage amplifiers to increase the DPS that my drones do cold, and I can activate it for an even bigger DPS increase from further away. This means, again, I'm sitting at that 21 kilometers away, I'm doing 100.87 DPS as standard. I can then activate that, and that will increase the DPS for my drones, increases my total offensive DPS, means I can just do that little bit extra damage. If I'm up against something like, say, a battle cruiser that has quite a heavy tank and seems to be boosting its shield or armor faster than I can deal the damage, that drone amplifier just allows me to whack that up a peg so that I can cut through that tank, or just to finish off something faster if there's a particular ship that just needs to be removed nickety-split. Now ultimately, defense-wise, you can see here, this is sitting now at the 2,110 mark. That is partially thanks to my skills, as I've got things like Frigate defense upgrade, always useful training if you're, like me, a Frigate pilot, but ultimately you can see it is still a fairly solid 614 armor there. We've got some nice reliable resistances there across the board. Ultimately, we shouldn't be taking damage if we're kiting. And finally, of course, we are capacitor stable, which is incredibly useful on a ship like this, because it means whilst I'm at that distance, I don't need to worry about my batteries running out. Always, always reliable. As we're going for a kiting build, the last thing we want to do here is warp in at the 0 kilometer mark, so I'm actually going to move all the way out to about 30 kilometers, and we'll start from there. This just gives us a brief bit of time to actually figure out what's going on, lock onto our targets, pick which one we're going for first, and get things set up, rather than just being dropped in at 0 and getting blown to smithereens. So here we are going into a tier 5 anomaly, using a Tech 3 frigate. Hey, always good fun times, right? So anyway, let's get in. We've got a burst, 2 stabbers, and a thrasher. So we are going to lock onto all of those, or rather the 3 that we can. I'm going to set an orbit around the thrasher of about 20 kilometers. That's around the thrasher of about 20 kilometers. And then we're going to launch drones into space, activate the micro warp drive, and start shooting my missiles too. Now here we go. Let's start up some damage. Hit the drone damage amplifier on there as well. Whee goes my capacitor, and around we go, slowly pulling that fleet thrasher down there, taking very little damage in return. Now the thrasher fleet issue is going to be our main concern here, the burst as well, because they are that little bit faster and thus able to hit me a little bit better than some of the others would. That said though, as you can see, we are quite comfortably doing some good damage here from a range of 22 kilometers. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to pull in a little bit so that we make sure that those missiles actually hit as well. Let's take that down to 19. just so those missiles are dealing their damage as well, because obviously with only Mark 5 drones, a lot of the DPS from this build does come from the missiles. Again, once the drones are a little bit better in the game, you'll find that this kind of stuff does become easier. Obviously, take a little bit of practice as well, just to get used to how all of this works. There we are, that was a bit of a better hit. Much better hit there now that the missiles are in range and doing their thing too. There goes the second volley, off it goes. See how much damage that does when it impacts. Oh, down it goes, and that Thrasher is now all the way down to hull. Round and round we go. I'm actually going to unlock the stabber there and lock the burst. Prepare to take that one out next. There we go. Orbit around that again to about the 19-kilometer mark. And yeah, I could set the standard orbit on this particular ship, but I'm showcasing so many of those I forget to set it ahead of combat. Oh, took a nasty punch of damage there. Okay, well, let's get that drone damage amplifier going and get rid of that burst as quickly as possible. Ultimately, that's one of the big things here. It is going to rely on you picking your targets, knowing which one you want to take out first, and doing so as quickly and painlessly as possible. Painfully for them, not painful for you. Move the drones across there. There we are. Curiously, only one drone was actually active then. Don't know what happened there. Interesting. Anyway, so now we're not taking as much damage there. We're going to be starting to pull that burst down. Move across now to the first of those stabbers. There we are, my drones have moved across nicely to that one this time. Missiles now firing through as well. Let's start to pull that stabber down. Now, I took a bit more damage than I would have liked to there. Ultimately, again, looking at this, maybe you might want to fit in something like an armor repairer, but you can see now that little phase of damage there has very quickly now been dealt with. I'm not taking damage anymore. My armor is down a little bit, my shield is recharging itself. Obviously, an armor repairer is useful, but doesn't really matter at this point. As long as I survive and finish off this entire mission, I can just dock up at a base and repair from there. And that's arguably how a passive armor tank would work anyway, but yeah. There we go, 65 armor. I'm quite happy with this, just leaving that now to autopilot in a circle round to take out that stabber, and we'll take out the second stabber once that one's down. Just obviously tier 3 frigate. Damage, obviously on something like a cruiser, takes a bit of time to punch through it, and I'm not going to showcase this entire anomaly because I've kind of given the example here that I want to give, and we have other topics to talk about. This second build instead takes a brawler's approach to combat. The aim is to get up close and personal, orbit in a tight circle around them to maintain a high angular velocity which makes you hard to hit, have some form of damage control available in case you do get hit, and then proceed to punch them in the face as quickly and powerfully as possible until they explode. Now, as I mentioned, the Tristan doesn't have any real skills dictating what the top slots should be. As such, for this particular one, because I'm skilled into lasers, I've gone for Rebel small pulse lasers. I had a couple of these lying around spare from a couple of my other laser ships. It felt like the right thing to put in. The aim here is just to go for whatever has the highest DPS for you personally. If you are skilled into lasers, then these pulses are going to be a good idea. If you've been using cannons, then you can use auto cannons. If otherwise you've been using railguns, go for it. Put in some snub-nosed railguns, have a whale of a time, whatever makes you happy. The idea is that it's the high DPS version. We don't care about the range here. Optimal range 5.67, accuracy fall off of 2.9. I'm going to be orbiting around the 5k margin anyway here. I'm quite happy to keep punching them in the face at that distance. Now, because we are up close and personal, in our low slots I've changed a few things around. We have a Mark 5 small armor repairer as some form of tank. Again, you can go for a shield booster if you're trained into shield tanking. If you've got more shield booster skills, you can shield boost a Tristan. Some people will call me a heathen in the comment section. It's viable. It works. Trust me, I've done it. An armor repairer is technically better if you're not sure which one to train into, shield or armor, and you have neither and you want to use the Tristan. Armor is slightly better, but shield does still work. In the second low slot, we've swapped out the micro warp drive for an afterburner. This is because up close and personal, we're going to be hitting hard and fast. We need the extra capacitor, and I also don't want to have the signature radius penalty for the micro warp drive being active 24/7. Watch my propulsion guide, that'll explain why you don't use a micro warp drive when you're speed tanking. Stick with the afterburner. Now, the mid slot here has changed also as well to a Mark 5 small energy Nosferatu. The main reason here is that if I were to unequip this, you would see that this particular build loses its capacitor stability, mainly because those lasers do use capacitor every time they fire, but also because we're intending to have an armor repairer running for quite a lot of the time. So having an energy Nosferatu allows you to drain their capacitor to refill yours and feed your own systems, thus allowing you to keep more of your modules active for a longer time. It's just the brawler's way, really. As with any brawler build, the aim is to get into combat with your target as quickly as possible. So almost as soon as we arrive in the anomaly, I'm hitting orbit onto my target. In this case, I want to be around actually about 5, 6 kilometer mark. I've got that afterburner going so I can get up close and personal. We're going to activate the drones and we'll send those in to start doing their damage, and then we'll add on the Nosferatu and the lasers, so that now that I close into damage here, you'll see that I'll start actually beginning to pull that Gisty probe apart. Now remember, this is a Tech 3 frigate going up against a Tech 5 anomaly. Yes, my shields are getting cut to pieces. That's obviously going to happen in a situation like this because I'm not building for shield tank or shield resistances here. I'm going straight up for the armor tank. So let's move in on the second ship there. That probe went down fairly quickly. The Gisty Thrasher's up next. Again, we're going to move into a nice close orbit. 12 kilometers, 11 kilometers, 10 kilometers, and as we get nice and close, I get that screeching warning that my shields are running out, but we don't care. Shields are not important here. This is all about the armor repairer. So now that we're into armor, I'm going to activate that armor repairer and start doing some damage through here. And you'll see that that does start cutting the Gisty Thrasher down to size really quite quickly. And I'm not really worried here too much about taking damage on the armor. Ultimately, I'm healing that back up, and who cares that I'm webbed as well? Means, yeah, I'm taking a bit more damage from the hits, but the armor repairer is quite happy to handle that. Down goes that Gisty Thrasher, well into hull now. Hopefully that'll be down into down and destroyed soon, and we can move on to that stabber and then take on the next wave, just to showcase that you can easily clear Tech 5 storyline missions and Tier 5 anomalies. Small and medium, definitely. Large, maybe a bit more problematic, just for the number of ships. You'll need to string them out a bit first. But ultimately, this is just to prove that you can indeed do this kind of content with a Tech 3 ship. And of course, yeah, I'm using storyline level lasers and things like that, but you don't need to. That's just the speed that I'm capable of doing this. Ultimately, you can see I'm still surviving quite happily. It's a Mark 5 armor repairer that I'm using here, Mark 5 afterburner. Just so happens that, yeah, the lasers are a bit more damaging, but again, that is just the speed at which I can do the anomaly. Ultimately, lower module weapons, lower mark weapons like Mark 5 or Mark 3 will still do it, they'll just take longer to do so. But again, there goes the stabber down into its armor now, and we're just going to slowly punch through that. You can see actually my shield's now recharging. That stabber cannot hit me. I'm too close, moving too quickly for it. It just cannot hit me with its turrets. So yeah, nice and safe. My shields can start to recharge, ready for the next wave. Anyway, I'm not going to showcase this entire battle because, as I've said before, that's just going to be fairly boring, watching me slowly take a ship apart and just ramble on and on about like where it is and commentating that, oh, we're in Hull now, which, admittedly, we are. Well, like any ship in EVE Echoes, if you're finding that you enjoy the Tristan, then of course you're going to want to skill into it. And as it's a drone ship, the first skill that you absolutely must train, at least to level 1, is in drone here, all the way at the bottom, drone. Weapon technology, drone, all the way to the bottom, drone. Simply called drone. I'm saying that as many times as I can, so that hopefully you remember it. The reason you need to get this at least to level 1 as soon as possible is that drone control number. Normally you can only control 1 drone. The Tristan has 2, therefore you need drone to level 1 to get that +1, allowing you to use 2. At that point, you can stop training drone for a while until you go up to something like the Algos that has 3 drones, then you would train this then up to level 3, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So once you've got drone to 1, where do you go from there? Well, fairly obviously there is a progression route that is going to start off with small drone operation. Get that to level 4 as quickly as possible. The reason we go to level 4 rather than level 5 is, well, have a look at those stats. You can see level 1 takes 250 skill points, level 2 is 1,165, level 3 is 6,585, level 4 is 37,255. Level 5 is then about 4 or 5 times as much as 1 through 4 combined. Obviously it only gives you a small increase for that 5th level, but it takes up so much more skill points, you can use them better elsewhere to start with. start off getting small drone operation to 4. The reason we go for that one first is because that is the skill that the Tristan benefits from most. That's going to give you an additional 20% drone hit points and an additional 20% drone damage on top of the skill itself at level 4, giving you 16 drone damage and 6% drone tracking speed. Well worth doing straight off the bat. Then you'd go into small drone upgrade and get that to level 4 for an additional 12% damage, 12% accuracy fall off, and 5% optimal range. Just, again, flat drone DPS increases. Get those to level 4 to start with. The amount of SP it'll take you to get all of those to level 4 is less than it'll take you to get upgrade to level 5, so you're getting a bigger DPS increase there without having to spend as many skill points. So get small drone operation to 4, small drone upgrade to 4, then come out and head towards cruising technology. Under cruising technology, you want to get frigate command up to level 4 too. Now, ultimately, what's the point in that? Because both of the builds I've showcased here don't actually use railguns, and the Tristan's bonus for frigate command is the railgun tracking speed. Why am I bothering with this skill? Well, simply put, it's for that 16% extra velocity and 20% extra inertia modifier. It just allows you to kite better if that's what you're going for, and if you're going for the brawling build, it allows you to move faster, take less damage, and maintain a tighter orbit, thanks to that inertia modifier adjustment. Ultimately, that now means you should have drone at 1, small drone operation to 4, small drone upgrade to 4, and then frigate command to 4. At which point you now then consider which other weapon system you're going for. Now, if you're going for lasers, then obviously you go for the laser versions of these. If you're going for missiles, like I've shown in the kiting build, you go for the missile skill. It's entirely up to you which one you go for. If you're not sure, I would go for missiles because you can put torpedoes in for the brawling and you can put missiles in for the kiting. So we're going to go based on that. Obviously, if you decide you want to go for railguns, cannons, or lasers, replace the word missile with laser cannon or railgun accordingly. At this point, you would then go for small missile torpedo operation 4 and small missile torpedo upgrade 4. Again, that's extra damage and just flat out DPS on those weapons. It means that your top slots are now doing more damage and staying in line with your drone skills. So, at this point, you should now have drone 1, small drone operation 4, small drone upgrade 4, frigate command 4, small missile torpedo operation 4, small missile torpedo upgrade 4. At this point in time, you go back and top up all of those to 5, starting with small drone upgrade because that is the one that influences the ship most directly. These are all alpha skills. These are all alpha skills, and they are super easy and they're surprisingly quick to train until you hit that small drone operation 5. Those 5s are suddenly what takes the extra time to train, but that gives you a great head start into what you're going to do. And if you're going for missiles, which as said, I do recommend ultimately, you can then of course use this as a springboard for going up to everyone's favourite ship, the Gurustus Pirate's Worm. Now I have done a video talking about the Worm at length already, but just to cover some brief details here, this does everything that I've just mentioned the Tristan does, but it does it even better. You get 3 mid slots to have all kinds of crazy fun with, you get additional low slots that allow you to go for tank and extra damage, you get 3 of each of the rig types as well, and those bonuses are just insane. 175% small drone damage, 200% small drone hit points, small drone damage 10% in extra control range for advanced small drone operation, and then advanced frigate command will give you additional damage to your missiles. So ultimately, if you're going for the Worm, get all of those skills I've talked about to 5, then start training into both advanced small drone operation and advanced frigate command. By the time you have those complete, you'll probably have about the 500 million ISK that it takes to build a Worm. You'll be able to buy one of these and start having some fun with it, and everything that you've been practicing with the Tristan suddenly comes into a whole world of its own with an absolutely terrifyingly versatile drone ship. The only difference here is that the Worm is predominantly shield tanked, whereas the Tristan traditionally is armor tanked. But as I said earlier on, you can shield tank a Tristan, so why not put your other skills into shield tanking as well, shield operation. And by the time you get up to the Worm, you're doing even better. Anyway folks, that really does wrap up everything that I wanted to say in regards to the Tristan. I adore this ship. This is probably one of my favourite tier 3 ships in the entirety of Eve Echoes. It is ridiculously versatile. You can go brawling with it, you can go kiting with it, you can build it for shield tanking, for armour tanking, heck, if you really want to be daring, build this for hull tanking, but that's a whole nother video for a whole nother time, or a whole nother video for a whole nother time. See what I did there? Anyway, if I'm making jokes like that, it means this video's gone on entirely too long, so thank you folks for watching right to the end, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!